We are back with the Dome Foamers podcast, and I am your host, Christian Krueger. And today we have a special episode for a special time of year with a special guest. So I'm excited to check it out with our college football preview. So here we go. All right, we are back, and I've got a special guest. Usually I'm joined by two other Victoria boys, but today, since we're doing our college football preview, we are honored to have Bobby Burton of On Texas Football and OnTexasFootball.com. Bobby, really appreciate you taking the time to help us with our college football preview.
Well, as a fellow Astros fan, I'm happy to do it as well. Thanks for having me, Christian. Appreciate you guys, and I listen to y'all's podcast as often as I get a chance to, and I think you guys do a great job. So happy to help any way I can.
Well, I appreciate it. For those that it's on TexasFootball.com. In my opinion, I'm a member. I love it. They do a great job. Bobby's been around the game for almost 30 years on the recruiting side. You've hired a great staff over there. The coffee and football every morning, Monday through Friday, is my favorite. I know y'all do a lot of the live shows. But when you have three kids, the morning's the best for me, and it's a great job. They had guests this morning, Rory Williams and Shay Holly, and they did a great job.
Oh, I appreciate that, Christian. We try. I say this a lot. We try to be a resource for Texas fans. I don't try to pretend that I know more than everybody else or anything like that. I certainly have a history with the University of Texas. Graduated there goodness gracious. I graduated there in 1992, so 30 plus years ago. But really, I mean, we started it to be a resource for people that just wanted to be fans of the University of Texas and Longhorn fans. And it's grown, and I'm really excited about our future. We got a lot of stuff going on. I mean, Bob Shipley joined us this year. Brian Robeson, the former defensive end, he's going to be on our post-game shows this year. So along with Jerry Hamilton, Rod Babers, CJ Vogel, we got a crew going right now.
Yeah, it's awesome. Y'all have grown, and it's great to see Coach Shipley. This was many moons ago. When I was coaching at Northwest High School, we played against Coppell, and he was there with a freshman wide receiver by the name of Jackson Shipley,
Yep.
who torched us. So Coach Shipley's a great guy. Jerry Hamilton is one of my favorites. CJ Vogel does a great job, obviously. So it's a tribute to you guys putting it together. I've been a part of other sites, and there's a lot of good ones out there, but I think you guys are the best. With the work ethic and the sources y'all have, and the fact that you can just be a fan and coming over there, I really appreciate it. I'm going to give Blake Monroe a shout out because I think he does a great job, even though he's a fan of the team up north, is what we like to call him on our Dome Foamers podcast. And I gave him a hard time this morning. So he got me back. So, but he does a great job. So let's just jump right into it, Bobby. Basically, because of the expansion this year to the 12-team playoff, we're just going to go through the four Power Four conference champions because they will essentially get the 1 through 4 seeds, and then we'll kind of see what you think maybe be the seeds 5 through 12, and talk about maybe the semifinals and your national champion, and let's have a little discussion there, and then we'll call it a day. But we did this last year. Last year, I took Michigan, Georgia, Texas, and Washington, so
Ooh.
I missed. Yeah, and I took Michigan as the national champion. And for those out there, the Colin Stallions Netflix documentary just hit today, so that'll be interesting to see. But let's see how right we can be. It's wide open. It's crazy. So, Bobby, do you want me to go first with the conference champions 1 through 4,
No,
or would you like?
I think that the two prohibitive favorites in the two biggest conferences and the marquee conferences in the country are clear cut right now, and that's Georgia and the SEC. They return a quarterback. I mean, what are they lost one game in 2 years? Something ridiculous like that.
And like 3 in the last 4. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean they're ridiculous right now, and they've got talent on offense and defense, not just at the skill positions where they bring back a quarterback that may be the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft. But they've got an offensive line that may be as good as we've seen in college football in quite some time. I mean, literally, they are expected to be phenomenal on the offensive front. And defense, Kirby Smart is a defensive coach at heart, and he's done a great job acquiring talent there. I think Georgia's the odds-on favorite and would be my pick in the SEC, although I think Alabama, Texas, and Ole Miss could get them on the right night. You know what I mean? They're not perfect. No team is, so they could be susceptible. And they play a couple of those teams on the road.
Yeah, they have their biggest games, with the exception of opening up this weekend against Clemson. They have Ole Miss, Alabama, and Texas, all 3 road games. And your points are spot on. I think they top to bottom have the best roster. My only concern is those 3 road games. Not sure they go through all 3 unscathed. And there's no Ladd McConkey or Brock Bowers helping Carson Beck. They are going to the NFL now. They're loaded, but that'll just be interesting to watch how they adjust, because those 2 guys were the go-to guys for that offense in Carson Beck. Now, again, the roster's loaded.
Yeah, I agree. Brock Bowers, in particular, by the way, was a safety valve of incredible ability. They do have a transfer coming in from Vanderbilt, last name Humphreys, Landon Humphreys. He is a big-time player. I know you hear Vanderbilt and you think, well, what do you mean? And I'm just going to tell you, he's going to fill Ladd McConkey's shoes pretty easily, actually. And Ladd McConkey is going to be a player in the NFL for a long time. So I feel good about their offensive pieces. They added a running back.
And they have the tight end from Stanford that Texas was looking at. Yours check. Yeah. So I mean, Georgia's gonna reload, no doubt.
Yeah, I'm good with that pick, and I hear you on the 3 road games, especially against Bama, Texas, and Ole Miss. They also go to Jacksonville for the cocktail party with Florida, and Florida's going to be a wounded animal, in my opinion. At that point, Billy Napier in particular is going to be a wounded animal, and so they're going to fight scratch and claw in that game. But I've got Georgia in the SEC, and I'd like to tell you that I think Texas is going to win the league, and I don't see it happening, not with Georgia sitting there.
I don't either, because I think we're going to have to play them twice, and I just don't think you beat Georgia twice. Even if you get them in Austin, let's say Texas wins by a last-second field goal or however it may play out. I think it's going to be tough to beat them again in Atlanta in the SEC championship game. I mean, that's just they're the best roster in football.
So, well, it would be a home game for them. Well, although we'll see. Georgia's good. I think Alabama's going to be better than most people realize this year. They've got a load of talent on offense returning. I really, really like their running back room at Alabama. In fact, I know Ohio State, who we'll probably talk about soon in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
A lot of people are pointing to it as the number 1 running back room in the country. And I agree with that. I think Alabama might be second, and a close second, because I think Jason McClellan, I think those guys, Jamari Miller and Justice Haynes, those are really, really good running backs. And
yeah, they are. You have a third one that takes the snap every time. I mean, that guy with the football in his hand, he's a beast when he's running off outside the tackle box.
I'm interested with Alabama, and I guess we're going a little too deep here, but
that's
I'm interested in Alabama and what they do offensively this year, because Jalen Milroe is not Michael Penix.
No.
In that he's not a pinpoint passer. Yet I think Kalen DeBoer, in his history, whether it's at South Dakota State or Fresno State or Washington, tells me he knows how to move the football, period. Whether he has a great quarterback that can deliver dots or not, And so I'm very leery about voting or picking against Alabama this year. Just think they're a really, really talented team with a really, really good ball coach.
I agree. It's hard to disagree all that. I do think they're going to have to figure out a way to, and I think they have the talent to do it, to run the ball more until they get, accustomed to that system. My one concern, and again, it's the same thing we talk about Georgia, the roster. The roster's loaded. The one thing in my opinion, the best player transferred out and is now at the team we're going to talk about here in a minute. Caleb Downs is an absolute superstar. And he's why I think he's a big loss. Now, Alabama's going to fill that hole, but him going to Ohio State, I think, is massive. And that's who I'm sure, I think you were alluding to that. That's who you picked in the Big Ten. We have the same two picks as SEC. I have Georgia win the SEC, and I have Ohio State. I hate going chalk, 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 but they're the two best rosters in football. I will say my one thing about Ohio State, I'm not sure I can trust Will Howard.
No.
I've seen good Will Howard. I've seen bad Will Howard. I just don't. I think he has so much talent around him, it might not matter. And I think a lot of that has to do with getting the Caleb Downs on the defensive side. Caleb Downs is the best safety in football. And I think that is going to help them in that conference in the Big Ten. But that is who I have as the Big Ten and my number two. I'm assuming actually, I have Georgia the number 2 seed, Ohio State the number 1, because I think Georgia's going to drop one of those games. But we'll talk about that here at the end. You have anything else you want to say about Ohio State that concern-wise?
Yes. Chip Kelly is the new offense coordinator at Ohio State. And at one point in time, Bill O'Brien was going to be the offense coordinator at Ohio State. I would have bet heavily against Ohio State winning the Big Ten had Bill O'Brien stayed as the offense coordinator, because Bill O'Brien likes to fit square pegs into round holes. Chip Kelly is not that guy.
No.
He will call a game and an offense to his team's strengths. And so I think that was a very fortunate thing that Bill O'Brien in the offseason got the Boston College job, because that opened up the opportunity for him to hire somebody that I think can maximize an offense as opposed to somebody, anchoring an offense, which is what Bill O'Brien do.
Well, this is an Astros podcast by its soul. So there's a lot of Houston Texans fans that just cannot absolutely stand that guy.
Well, I mean, for good reason. Let's
absolutely
good reason.
Absolutely.
Coaches that are, it's my way or the highway, and the highway isn't really pretty. That's Bill O'Brien. I mean, he thinks that it's his way or the highway, and that's the way to win. But he's not right. There are more within one way to win in football or in any sport. And unless you're Nick Saban or Bill Belichick, you don't get afforded that kind of latitude that you can trade away your best players. Or it's just, I think that some coaches get eat up with themselves and, put Bill O'Brien right under that one for me.
Yep, I agree. All right. Who do you have as your 3 seed? What conference champion?
Well, I don't have, since you have to say seeds, because I would not rank this the 3rd best team, but I'm actually going with Utah in the Big 12. Cam Rising, name familiar to a lot of Texas fans, is back for a 6th year of college football after sitting out last year from injury. I think Kyle Whittingham does a really good job. I think Utah is a very tough place to play. And I think they're going to be better than anything that comes out of the ACC. So I would go with Utah over probably. I mean, look, I think everybody's saying Oklahoma State. I'm not so sure Texas Tech isn't the 2nd best team with Baron Morton coming back at over there. So I'm going with Utah right now until something different shows up.
I have Utah as well in the Big 12. I think the Big 12 is wide open. I'm glad Texas is no longer a part of it. However, it's going to be some fun football with the schools they've brought in. I have them as my 4 seed. I have Utah as well. People are saying Oklahoma State. I like your. I know Joey McGuire from back in the day, and all his comments he's made in the past couple of years towards Texas, but I'm not sure Kansas State doesn't come and win the league with Avery Johnson. I need to see a little more in that, but I do think the Big 12 is wide open.
Iowa State's got a good quarterback, good young
Yeah,
quarterback.
yeah, they do.
If you really want to look at it that way, I mean, Arizona has a new coach, but they may have the best combo of signal caller and
Sure.
playmaker at receiver.
Middle linebacker.
And that middle linebacker, they've got a pair of defensive backs. Dwayne Aquina is a longtime friend of mine in the coaching ranks. He's the defense coordinator at Arizona right now, and I know for a fact they've got 2 or 3 DBs right now that he thinks are NFL material, a high level NFL material. So their defense has a chance to be a little different from other people. And then they've got the offense. The only thing I don't know about is the new coach who's coming in from San Jose State after Jed Fish went up to take over for Kalen DeBoer at Washington.
The thing, you said it earlier, and I agree with you. The thing I lean towards Utah is having to go to play at Utah is a tough place to play, and Kyle Whitting is one of the best in the business. He just is. And that gave me and experienced quarterback. You know, Avery Johnson played some last year. He's a heck of an athlete, heck of a runner. He struggled some in the pass game. So that's going to be interesting to see how he does. I will go with the Kyle Whittingham, Cam Rising combo as well.
I want to put this out there. Player no one's talking about national right now is the running back at Iowa State. He's a freak. Texas held him last year, but then he went into Manhattan, Kansas, and ran up and down the field. He was a true freshman a year ago. I think he's, Ollie Gordon is going to get all the PR in the world and probably should at Oklahoma State, rightfully so. But I'm telling you, the running back at Iowa State, he's a guy that's going to play football for a long time. So, keep them and Rocco Becht in mind. That's the quarterback that was young, that had a lot of experience. There's something about that Iowa State team and Matt Campbell where if he gets out of his own way, he's another coach that likes to make it tough on himself. If he gets out of his own way, they might surprise some folks.
Well, it seems like when they have expectations, they go backwards. When they have no expectations, they raise level play, and they end up knocking off a lot of people. It's a good point. I do think Matt Campbell stayed there a little too long when he had the opportunity to go some places. I also understand loyalty as well. But he had the opportunity to take some big-time jobs, and he's just stayed there.
Hey, it's like Jeff Traylor staying at UTSA and not taking Texas Tech. It's easy to be loyal when they're paying you $3 million a year. that's my take. And you're comfortable, and how much money do you need?
Right.
And so I think that there can be a lot of coaches that stay too long, but it's a different day and age these days, Christian, in my opinion, when they're staying not for 150 grand versus 175, but 3 million compared to 5 million. It's just a different.
No, that is true. All right, so the ACC had a nice little upset last week with Georgia Tech beating Florida State. Florida State, I was not going to be my pick. I cannot pick a team that loses as much talent as they lost and has DJU as their quarterback. I can't do it. So they weren't. I have a feeling they probably weren't yours, but it doesn't matter now because that game's over. And they still could run the table and win the ACC or, possibly lose a game. But that was a conference game. That's going to hurt them. So who do you have winning the ACC, Bobby?
I'm cheating. Based on what I saw, I think Georgia Tech's going to be hard to beat. Decent defense, good quarterback, good run game, good coach, knows how to put things together. I'm not a believer in Florida State, to your point, and I think that was obvious on Saturday. I think that Miami, I'm not a believer in Mario Cristobal, period. I think he's a great recruiter, but anybody that runs themselves out of a football game twice, not once, but twice, tells me that they're stubborn to a level that – and Cam Ward, who's a Texan, native Texan, that quarterback, he throws a lot of interceptions in big games. Mac Brown, love him to death, but I mean, how many times was Mac Brown the favorite in the Big 12 and didn't win it? I mean,
Right.
so I look around that league. I know Virginia Tech is a fashionable pick right now because they've got a lot of starters returning. I think the most of any team in FC or in the FBS, but
they're going to be fun to watch. If that quarterback, if he can take a step in the forward, he's going to be fun. They're going to be fun. They're going to beat some teams they shouldn't. I don't think they're going to be able to win the ACC, but it depends on the development of that kid. That kid can go. He can play.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people are saying, what about Clemson? That's the, elephant in the room whenever you start talking about the ACC and you don't mention them. This is a big year for Dabo Swinney, in my opinion, Christian, because Cade Klubnik is kind of his third year playing now. He played a little bit as a freshman, then started all of last year. He's got to take a step. The bigger piece of it is, and this is a fair question that involves USC as well. Garrett Riley's the offense coordinator at Clemson. That's the brother of Lincoln Riley. And my question is have people started catching up a little bit with the Riley's offense? A little bit. USC with a 1-1 pick at quarterback and all that talent that they had on that roster did not move the ball in the second half like they did previously under Lincoln Riley. Garrett Riley at Clemson did not move the ball using the same plays. And so we've seen this. I've been around 30 plus years in this business. You've been around a while yourself. When people catch up to the run and shoot, to the spread, the veer, whatever, I don't even know what Art Briles called his, but my point being, when they catch
the veer and shoot,
yeah, when people catch up to that, then there's a newfangled thing that comes about. And my point is, right now, I'm wondering a little bit if people have caught up to the Riley-based version of the spread. Don't know for sure. I literally don't know for sure, but given fairly average results last year at USC and Clemson, I'm thinking there may be a little something to it.
Man, now I don't like my pick as much, Bobby.
You going Dabo?
Well, I think Klubnik's going to. I don't disagree with anything you said. I'm trying to find ways to disagree with you here. I have a feeling when we go picks 5 through 12, we're going to have some of that. But I agree. The ACC is wide open, especially now with what we saw at Florida State. I do not trust Mario Cristobal one bit. I think their roster is loaded. I do not trust him. I would like to see Cam Ward against more athletes. Incarnate Word, Washington State, while he put up crazy numbers, it's not the same as going against Clemson, Florida State, NC State, Virginia Tech, in my opinion. Now Georgia Tech. I'm going with the team that I think that has the best defense. I'm going with Clemson because of that. I think that could end up being a horrible pick. It could end up being the right pick, but I think it's anywhere in between. I'm not going to pick Miami, which I'll talk about here in a little bit because they are in my top 12 until I see them do it. Until I see Mario Cristobal do it, I can't go there. Dabo's proven it. Now Dabo hasn't proven it in this new portal era because we know how he feels about all that, right? He wants to do it with homegrown players and develop those players. So I agree with what you said starting out, talking about the ACC, is he's got to prove it. It is a massive year for Clemson and really for Dabo to say, look, everyone around us is restocking their roster. I'm doing it my way. And he's either going to look like an absolute genius or he is going to look like a huge failure that does not want to adapt to the college game. And we're about to find out this year.
I think he already has proven he doesn't want to adapt. Now whether he fails or not is a different story. I have no problem. These are all prognostications. And so anybody that sits back here and tells you or I that we're
Right.
100% wrong, or vice versa, they're guessing a little bit themselves. I have no problem with going with Clemson because they're the most talented team in the league overall, even without
Yeah.
going to the portal. To your point, and so if you're unsure, go with the Jimmies and the Joes, not the X's and O's.
I know. I just hate going chalk, 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 chalk. But but so I have Ohio State getting the 1 seed because I think they have a better record than Georgia. Georgia the 2, Clemson the 3, Utah the 4. I think. Do you have Georgia 1?
I do have Georgia 1.
Yeah,
I think there's a chance that they're special.
I
I
agree.
also think that there's a chance Ohio State is special if and only if Will Howard has actually improved or they found a way. I have a hard time believing that Will Howard is actually going to help Ohio State win a game.
I
Like,
agree.
is Will Howard going to be a guy when it's all on out there? Is he going to be more than just a bus driver? Like a
If you
different.
look, if you look at Will Howard's stats compared, they're not as good as the guy they got rid of in Kyle McCord, who they had last year. They basically ran out of town. It's a weird fit to me. Again, there might be so much talent there in the backfield and playing wide receiver and offensive line, it might not matter. But I've got to see it.
Oh,
They've
they've
got
got guys on defense too. You mentioned Caleb
yes, they
Downs,
do.
but they bring back, I think, 3 starters on a defensive front that, other than
Yeah.
Michigan, manhandled the rest of the Big Ten. So, I mean, I like Ohio State, Utah, and Georgia Tech. I don't really care who goes 3 or 4. Those are just
Yeah.
my picks for winning a league, and
I love.
I don't think either of them should be in the top 8 in the country. I'll put it that
Yeah.
way.
I love the Georgia Tech. I love it. I
Why
love it.
not? I mean,
I know.
look, they actually put it on the scoreboard, and I think that that league is a mismatch. I mean, it's a mashup of
It is.
far from perfect teams, not unlike the Big 12 is right now. The difference with the Big 12 is you're really going on history of a really good coach. Name the really good coach in the SC and the ACC. It's Dabo and Mac have the most skins on the wall, right? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Mac, frankly, you can't trust him to win a conference championship. Couldn't trust him to win a conference championship at Texas. And I'm not mad at him. I'm happy he was the coach at Texas. I mean, just
Sure.
same thing. Dabo, I mean, he's out to lunch a little bit on this portal stuff. Mario Cristobal.
I think Dave Doran's a good coach at NC State.
Oh yeah, that's fair. But
yeah,
my point is, Kyle Whittingham is that guy.
Yep.
In the Big 12.
Yep.
Who's that guy in the ACC? Yep. You really think? If you think Dabo's that, I mean, I don't know. I mean, he won
well,
it.
I think he's a good coach. I do. I mean, he was the first person to go head to head with Nick Saban and beat him, and he beat him twice. But to your point, that was now 5, 6, 7 years ago. Like the game has changed light years since then, and that's the issue with Dabo is the game is changing so fast, and he's like he will not adapt. But enough about Clemson and ACC.
Well, I want to say this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Who did Deshaun Watson beat in the national championship, and who did Trevor Lawrence beat in the national championship? Trevor Lawrence beat a freshman, Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, he had 2 freaks at quarterback. Trevor Lawrence and Deshaun Watson were the best quarterbacks in those games.
Well, I mean, and I agree with you. And we love Mac Brown for his time as Texas. If Tim Brewster doesn't get Vince Young here, there is no national title for the University of Texas.
That's what I'm getting at with you with Clemson. So,
fair.
I've talked to Greg McElroy. I mean, Nick Saban won a national championship with Greg McElroy, and what's the Coker, the other one? He's won national championships with pedestrians. Dabo needed 1-1 picks to win.
Were you at that game, the Rose Bowl against Alabama?
Oh yeah. I was sitting on the 30-yard line, up in the press box, and on that side of the field, on that 30-yard line, And yeah, it was a gut punch. It's
Yeah,
one
I was
probably
there.
the biggest gut punch I've had in my
I,
career following college football.
I will never forget it because I was there with my dad and my brother. We were in the high up in the end zone. I love the Rose Bowl. I love the Rose Bowl to watch a game. It's just special, and I think everyone should go to see a game there, a Rose Bowl. I'll never forget tailgating, and the entire country, including Texas and Florida, were under a freeze warning, with the exception of Southern California, from San Diego to Pasadena. Everywhere else in the country, we were in a massive freeze across the country. I'll never forget the weather. It's just a special place. But yeah, talk about a gut punch. That was a gut punch. And seeing Colt reference it in his retirement video was like, oh man, I wish that guy could have won one. He becoming after, and now we're getting Texas centric here, and we'll go back to the thing. Him coming after Vince Young, I'm not sure college football fans and even Texas fans will ever truly know. Yes, they know he was great. Yes, they know he was good. I don't know if they'll ever appreciate him like the numbers that he really put up because he came after Vince Young. What are your thoughts on that?
And he was overshadowed in the Big 12 in 08 by Sam Bradford.
So he was better then, by the way.
Yeah, oh, long term he was, yeah. But Sam had an offense that really allowed for him to get some gaudy numbers. Yeah. I think, and not that Colts weren't gaudy at times, but that loss in Lubbock stings, because I think that had Texas won that and Colt led them back from being down in that game heavily, I think that Heisman Trophy goes to Colt, because he goes on in the Big 12 and has the head-to-head win over Sam Bradford in their only matchup. And it's tough, but those are the breaks. But Colt McCoy had a great career for the Longhorns. For sure.
He did. All right, so let's move in 5 through 12. Bobby? Who is your fifth seed?
I'm going Alabama. I'm telling you, I like the Crimson Tide. I like their team. I like Kalen DeBoer a lot. I know that that's not popular, but I genuinely don't see, if Texas and Alabama don't play, right? I think whoever loses to Georgia in the conference championship game is going to actually get pushed down below what the other team that doesn't make the conference championship game is, because they'll have two losses. I could see Alabama losing one game all year. I really could. We'll see. Ole Miss would have been a possibility to take a similar tact, but I'm going to go with Alabama.
I am going with Texas.
Okay.
I think Texas beats Michigan. I think I think it's obviously a good time to catch Michigan in Ann Arbor. I really wish that game was in Austin like it should have been, but I totally understand why it was changed. I think Texas wins that game. I'm always going to lean towards the experienced quarterback in a game like that. And I just think they lost too much on offense. They're going to be tough on defense, and I think it's going to be tough sometimes for Texas to move the ball. I think Texas beats Michigan. I think they lose to Georgia in Austin, and so I'll just throw it out there. I think Texas goes 11-1, and I think they lose to Georgia again in the SEC championship.
My take on Texas regular season is 10-2.
Yeah,
and I struggle, to your point about beating Michigan. Michigan's very confident heading into this game that they're going to beat Texas up front. And I will tell you, they've got the dudes to do it.
They do. They do.
And so if they do that and are able to get after Quinn Ewers to a level that Quinn just can't manage, and then they can eke out 17 points on offense, I could see that. I mean, I really could. I have an issue going with Texas in that game against Michigan. Just like I had an issue last year, though, about taking Texas going into Bryant-Denny.
Yeah.
And I was proven wrong then. I may be
Right.
proven wrong again, but yeah, I've got Texas making the playoffs, but not at number 5 overall.
My concern is obviously, as everyone's talked about, is we lost Sweat and Murphy, and Michigan is going to come right at you. They've got Donovan Edwards. They've got a great fullback who's a lead back for them, Bredesen, and they have this all-world tight end. And that is a recipe for ball control and to beat you up. So that is my concern. I'm not worried about their outside speed as much. Now, a defensive miscommunication and a ball over the top could happen, but I have no idea what their quarterbacks are going to be. I have no clue. And they're going to line up and come right at us. So if we can hopefully load the box, some of the DTs can manage the guards. They have a new offensive line as well, and let Anthony Hill roam. I think it's going to be one of those 23-20 games, 23-17 games likely. And it's just a matter of, can we score enough on that defense? Because that defense is still loaded for Michigan. But I'm going to take the experienced quarterback and the more speed, even on the road. And I can also say that since I'm a homer. But I think it's a great game. I think it's going to be a great early season test and a great early season game.
It is, and I'll tell you this. I mean, even though I have Texas losing that game, I have Texas in the playoffs, but not Michigan. So
I don't have Michigan in the playoffs either.
Yeah, and so it's just it's a gut feel. I'm not saying I'm right. Yeah, again, this is all prognostication. I had 5 Alabama, 6. I went with Penn State. I know that's going to be odd to some people, but I think
they're in a lot. They're in a lot of people's, 5 to 12.
Well, I think the interesting thing for me is I have them over Oregon.
Yeah.
Out of the Pac-12 or the Big Ten now, I guess.
I have Oregon. I have Oregon at 6.
Yeah, those 2 teams. I think Oregon's going to make the playoffs. By the way, I think there'll be. I think there'll be 3 Big Ten teams. I have 4 SEC teams, and then I have one from only one from the Big 12, and 2 from the ACC. So.
We have very similar. That's exactly how I am, and we did not talk about this before we started recording. Now I think our teams are going to be different, and our seeding is going to be different. But I bet we have some different teams. I have Oregon at 6, and I have the same as you. I have 4 SEC, 3 Big Ten, 2 ACC, and 1 Big 12. Excuse me. I have at 7. I have Miami, and I have Miami because I think they're the most talented roster, and I think the AC is not as good as the Big 12.
Okay, I don't have Miami anywhere near the playoffs.
I understand.
Until he can prove so at Oregon he got guys out of their way, and that's a hard thing to do when they're really talented. I'm just not a believer in that program until
I'm not either.
They're a lot like Texas in that until he can prove that he can get those guys out of their own way, I'm still not sure they're a team. I think it's a collection of talent. And I'm not sure his way works at Miami like it did elsewhere. So
you'd think he would know. He played there. I agree. I agree with you. I just look at their schedule, and I think they're going to beat Florida because I don't think Florida is very good. It's a road game for Miami, but I mean, I look at Cam Ward and Graham Mertz. I'm taking Cam Ward there. I think that hadn't been talked about is Miami getting the running back from Oregon State, the Martinez kid. I think he is a huge find for them to be able to run the ball, take pressure off of Cam Ward. I'm with you. I cannot disagree with you. I don't trust Cristobal. I'm doing a lot of this just looking at schedules and matchups. I'm not as concerned as now. Can Florida State rebound and beat Miami? Sure. That's a rivalry game. We know how those work. But I wasn't impressed with Florida State either. I would love
Yeah.
for you to be right on. I would love for you to be right on Georgia Tech, but we'll see. I mean, they are a loaded roster. He's done a good job with the portal. His time management and his scheme is not the. It's not even close to being ready for big time college football. So let's see. Hey, I'm not a Miami fan, so I hope I'm wrong. Who
Yeah.
do you have? Who do you have at 7?
7, I went with Ole Miss.
Okay, I've Ole Miss at 8.
Yeah. Ole Miss 7. Experienced quarterback. Nick Saban said something on College Game Day on Saturday that resonated with me. And, um, Billy Glasscock used to be the director of player personnel at Texas, took the Ole Miss job as the GM in January of last year. And they really hit the portal extraordinarily hard on the line of scrimmage on defense. And Nick Saban said they finally look like an SEC team up front. Lane Kiffin is a great offensive play caller. He has not had the offensive and defensive line to compete at the highest level in the SEC. He finally does. And so I picked them over teams like Texas and Tennessee right now because I think they have pieces to the puzzle,
Experienced quarterback.
Experienced quarterback is a almost a given for me when I start picking teams early because I think that matters. But yeah, I've got Ole Miss at 7. What about you? Who did you have at 7?
Miami.
Okay, Miami 7. My 8, I put Oregon at 8. I do think that
we're gonna have a lot of the same teams. We just have them meshed differently.
Yeah, probably so. Oregon at 8. I think Dan Lanning's got the pieces. I think that Dylan Gabriel is tantalizing in that he gets you really close, but he's just not a guy that gets you over the top.
He's not accurate enough.
Accuracy, he doesn't like. Texas made him look like a freaking great runner last year, unfortunately, and he's not a great runner.
No, he's a good runner. I mean, he can move around, but you're exactly right. Like that was some poor scheme, poor defense. I'm still having PTSD on that.
Yeah, Jalen Ford picked the bad day to have the worst day of his career in that game. But anyways, I think that Will Stein's a really good offensive coordinator. I think he'll be a major college head coach a year from now. A lot of people said, "Oh, well, Traylor's going to take the Baylor job, and Will Stein will go to UTSA." Will Stein's going to get a D1 job in the Power 4 next year, the Oregon offensive coordinator. That's my anticipation. So I would go Oregon at 8. 9, I actually circle back to the University of Texas.
Okay.
I think Texas, 4 of the top 9 teams in the country will be SEC teams, and I think they'll be well-deserved. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but I'm a big Longhorn advocate this season going into it. I worry about going to Michigan, and I worry about having Georgia at home. I worry a little bit about Kentucky the week before you play A&M and rekindle that rivalry. And then I also worry about A&M and going to College Station. Bob Shipley, who is on with us on Texas football, Christian, three of the Texas's 4 toughest games, at least from a 30,000 foot view, are on the road. Now, the one in Dallas is a neutral site game, but other than Georgia, Texas goes to Michigan, and Texas goes to A&M. So 3 of the 4 on the road. Going to have to bring your A game in all 4 of those.
I had Ole Miss at 8. So you had them at 7. So very close. At 9, I have Notre Dame.
Yeah.
And it took me, my pen didn't want to write it. And it takes me all the pain. I've never been a Notre Dame fan at all. However, if they get past A&M, which I think is a massive game for both schools on Saturday night for a number of reasons, their schedule is it's frustrating how weak their schedule is. And it spells to me 10-2. I don't think Notre Dame's necessarily one of the top 10 teams in the country. But if they can find a way to beat the Aggies in Kyle Field, which will be a tough game, A&M could definitely win that game. That'll be a field goal game in my opinion. Either way, their schedule sets up where they're going to go 10-2, 11-1.
They're going to go. I think they're going to lose to A&M. By the way, I mean they're starting a true freshman left tackle in Kyle Field at night or evening. How many false starts do you think he's going to have?
He's going to have a.
What's the over under? 6? I mean, seriously.
I agree with you.
Nick Scourton, the Purdue transfer.
I have zero faith. I have zero faith in A&M's offensive line. Zero. I don't. I trust Elko. I think Elko is a good fit. He reminds me a little bit of R.C. Slocum, a defensive-minded coach, just a ball coach. I think Elko is going to be good there. I do, and I think he's going to have that D playing great. And I think your point is taken, and I agree with you that this screams 20-17 ball game. A&M can't have a quarterback that ever makes it past game 4 because their offensive line has been so bad, and I don't see it being replaced with a new scheme. They're going to try to run the ball with Colin Klein as the OC. Notre Dame's got some dudes up front in their front 7 on defense as well. I think it is a complete old school football game, and whoever can kick the field goal to win it is going to win that ball game. I think Notre Dame, because of Riley Leonard being able to scramble, make a few plays. Connor Wegman can scramble too, but does he want to? That guy's never made it past game. He's never made it past game 4 or 5. And that's what my thing is. Colin Klein really going to run Connor Wegman, who I like, by the way? Are they really going to try to run him like he did at Kansas State? I don't think they can afford to.
I'm with you. I hear you.
That's a toss-up game for me. All right, who do you have at 10?
10, I actually had your friend, Clemson. I went with Clemson at 10. I felt like with Klubnik back, I think they're going to be a solid team. I just have no faith in him winning a conference championship without an elite quarterback. It's going to be the way he coaches. I've got no without a true. I mean, elite, like Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence, elite. I'm not a believer in Dabo Swinney.
Okay, you tagged him, my friend. But I will say this. I think, and I'm not saying you are, but I do think the national media and people out there are giving up on Klubnik too soon. I know the guy that coached him in high school fairly well, and I think there's more there. But
I think Cade is a good player. I just don't think he's 1-1. And
I don't think he's 1-1.
I think that's what Dabo needs to get him out of the paper bag that he finds himself wrapped up in every year.
That's fair. I think we're going to see more Klubnik because I know where he comes from and how he's been coached and his athletic ability. I think we're going to see. Let me tell you this. I would take him, and this isn't a shock the world statement, but I mean, you've got one team in Clemson that's the ACC power that has him, and the other one that has DJU. That's where DJU came from. Klubnik is a massive upgrade over that, and I'm surprised that where he ended up. But all right, so you have Clemson at 10. I'm not going to tell you I have at 10 until I read you this schedule. Okay, you ready for this?
Yep.
This is my number 10 team, and this is their 12-game schedule. Murray State at home, Buffalo at home, Boston College at home, Vanderbilt at home, at Texas A&M, at UMass, versus Auburn at home, at Alabama, at home versus OU, at South Carolina, at Mississippi State, at home versus Arkansas. You want to say who it is?
I think it's LSU. Is that who it is? Or no,
it's Missouri. It's Missouri.
Oh boy. Well, I can see that.
That schedule, they could lose at A&M and at Alabama and go 10-2.
I like Eli Drinkwitz. I really do. but I think he lost too much on defense.
And lost his defensive coordinator.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And Blake Baker's down. LSU. I think he lost too much. I think LSU's a better team than them this year. If LSU can actually play defense, by the way. But
I'm not convinced.
I get it. I see where you're going. I
just read you an SEC team in that schedule, and I look at it, and their three hardest games are A&M, which they are just as good. I mean, they're equal to A&M, in my opinion. At Alabama, that Alabama will be favored there and should win that game, but we know how it is in football. And at home versus OU, that's their three toughest games. If they go 1-2 in those three games, they're sitting. I mean, that is one of the weakest SEC schedules I've seen that no one's really talking about.
I hear you. I like their coach. I like their quarterback a lot.
I do too. Brady Cook.
Luther Burden is a burner. I just feel like all those Barry Odom defensive players are gone.
Yeah, that's fair.
And you can say what you want, but how many points did they score against Ohio State in the bowl game? And how many points did Ohio State score against them? Their offense can be had, in my opinion. And I think that those guys that, frankly, Barry Odom recruited, most of them, are now gone to the NFL. So I'm not saying no. I went with Notre Dame number 11.
Okay.
That's who I went with. I think they're going to lose to A&M and then win out.
And that's another. I mean, I'm not going to take the time to pull up that schedule, but because I looked at it, that schedule is ridiculous.
If they beat USC, they're going to win out.
Yeah.
It is a ridiculous schedule, and it has all the makings of a Notre Dame East Coast media bias run. I mean, I'm just telling you, it's borderline ridiculous. And so
you have them at 11?
Yep, 11.
Who'd you have it? I'm gonna write this down so I can. Who'd you have it at 10 again? I'm sorry, I missed that one.
All right, Notre Dame. All right, excuse me, Clemson at 10.
Oh, that's right. I have Penn State at 11.
Okay.
For all the reasons you talked about. James Franklin cannot beat Michigan and Ohio State. I don't think he's going to do it now. However, I was invited to go down to the U.S. All-American game to watch practices through a coaching contact. Happened to be working. They get invited to be on staff for that thing, and I went down there and got to see Drew Aller throw, and I was just mesmerized at his arm. They have got to find a way to get that kid in a scheme that works for him, because it's not about arm talent, and he can throw any ball there is. I will say this, and this goes back to Texas, and we'll start wrapping this thing up. The other most impressive player there that day when I got to see those practices was Jalen Gilbro. I'm excited to see what he's going to do. So that's a name to watch. All right, so here's the thing. The group of group 5, whatever you want to call it, has a spot for the highest ranked group 5 team. And that's where most people are putting at 12. And talk about a crapshoot. I mean, it's a crapshoot when you look at schedules. I'll lead this one off, and I took App State.
Okay.
I think they'll win the Sun Belt. I really wanted to take Texas State here. I live in Central Texas. I have G.J. Kinney's doing amazing things there. Unfortunately, I don't think he's going to be there very long. But talk about a guy that's taking some players out of the portal. They have the James Madison quarterback, who's going to be their starter at Texas State. I just don't think they play UTSA, which will be a rivalry game, and they play Arizona State. And then they have the Sun Belt schedule. When I saw their schedule, I was like, I just don't see them. I don't see them. I see probably 9 wins instead of 11 wins likely. So I took with App State has a returning quarterback, and that's who I have as the group of 5 team that's going to get in the playoff, which is crazy to me that we're finally to that point where there's going to be a group of 5 in the playoff every year.
Yeah. Look, I went with Boise State.
Yeah.
Mountain West does a preseason poll, and 38 of 42 sports writers in that conference picked Boise State to win. To your point, App State is not a prohibitive favorite in the Sun Belt.
No.
They're a favorite, but they're not none of the smaller conferences have a prohibitive favorite as big as Boise. And frankly, I don't know enough about them, but I looked at their schedule. They've got Oregon. They go to Oregon, and after that, they host Oregon State late.
Mm.
And
That'll be the
Oregon
game.
State has been decimated.
They have.
So if they go 11-1 with a loss to Oregon, Boise State's in. That's that. Now they could come out of the gate and lose right away, and I'm totally wrong because I don't know their personnel well enough. They've got Georgia Southern.
By the way, that's a Sun Belt team.
Yeah,
that is a scary game right there.
Hey, talk about a team that may melt. How about Boise going to Georgia to Georgia Southern?
What is the line on that
3
game? I'm gonna have to check.
Start.
That's a scary game. Yeah, I was surprised Malachi Nelson did not win that job. The former 5-star recruit. Yeah. I don't think he's healthy. I think he's had shoulder issues. It's an interesting character who's the quarterback. I don't know enough about Boise State either.
I want to say something you mentioned about Penn State because I didn't get a chance to comment there. Andy Koltanicki is the new offense coordinator at Penn State. Comes over from Kansas, where I think he did a marvelous job. We'll see what Penn State comes up with. If he provides any juice to that offense, it would be welcome. And I've got Penn State, like I said, I think it's 6. And the reason I have them there is because of their defense. I don't expect jack from their offense. As long as James Franklin's your head coach, I really don't expect your offense to be much. But I think Koltanicki gives them some upside. So we'll see.
We will. I just checked real fast. Boise State is favored by -12.5. That's a scary game.
In Georgia, in the middle of August 31st at 3 p.m., where if you haven't been to South Georgia, you might as well be playing in Houston or New Orleans. I mean, it feels like, it ain't that far from the swamp. I'll just put it that way.
It's not. All right, so that'll be a fun game to watch.
Who did you go with 12? You said
App State. Yep, I went with App State. So for the sake of time, by the way, just so for those that listen to the Dome Foamers podcast, 1 through 4 has buys, 5 through 8 has a home game, which I think is the coolest thing. I think that is going to be so fun and so cool to see. I mean, you have Oregon at the 8-9 game hosting Texas. Ooh. That place will be rocking. I've got Ole Miss hosting Notre Dame. I mean, there's gonna be some great matchups, whatever ends up happening.
Look, we had 10 of the 12 same teams?
We did.
9 of the 12 same teams?
You had Boyd, and then one of them was a group of 5, which is a complete crapshoot. So I had Missouri, and you didn't have, and you had Bama. I did not have Bama. I do not have Bama or LSU in my 12-team playoff, but I have 4 SEC schools.
Yeah, same. I've got 4. You didn't have Georgia Tech.
Correct.
We'll see.
We will. It'll be fun. So who do you have your final 4? And then we'll national champion. Then we'll kind of wrap this bad boy up.
Yeah, given 4 plays 5, so I think Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, and I'm going to say Ole Miss. I'm going to say 3 of 4 will be SEC. Texas is a tougher road if they're 9. They'd have to beat Oregon at Oregon, then beat Alabama, and then or not Alabama, then beat Alabama or no Georgia, I think, right?
If you miss that first 4 bye, and you can get that 5 to 8, that's where you want to be.
Right, I agree.
So I have
5 gets to play App State or Boise.
Correct.
Yeah.
I have Texas playing App State in Austin. I have then Texas playing the 4 seed Utah and winning that game to get into the college football playoff. So my college football playoff is Texas versus Ohio State, 5 versus 1, and then Oregon. I have Oregon at 6, beating Clemson, and I have Oregon versus UGA in Georgia, and then I have Ohio State versus Georgia, and Georgia winning it all.
I'm picking Georgia as well.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's hard. It's hard not to.
go with the best quarterback.
Yeah.
That has the best talent surrounding him.
You get through all that, and we're going to go down to, in my opinion, the 2 best rosters, Ohio State and Georgia, and you have Carson Beck and Will Howard. I'm going Georgia.
Ditto.
Yeah.
I think you can't say it better than that.
Yeah. Bobby, before we wrap up, anything you want to add? I appreciate you coming on and helping the Dome Foamers podcast out. Do you have a Stros prediction? What are the Stros gonna?
I mean, how many more pitchers are they going to lose this year? I mean,
I know.
Is Kyle Tucker ever going to get back?
That is one of the weirdest injuries I've ever seen.
Yeah.
June 3rd, he fouled it off his shin and hasn't been back since, or seen from, basically.
Yeah. I think that my worry about the Stros is I don't think they're going to win the World Series this year. Is too many injuries, the rotation, even though I just don't, it doesn't feel like that kind of team to me. I mean, you have 2 outfielders right now with those 600 OPS.
I mean,
you're not going to get there. I'm more concerned as a long-term fan of the Astros with the depleted roster. Like, you can't just continue to try to think that you're going to find magic out there in the MLB draft. And I'm concerned that I'm concerned with that leadership. It still doesn't seem like Jeff Luhnow. It was tremendous, right? I mean, you can say
tremendous. He was tremendous.
Yeah. But he stocked that thing to win for 10, 15 years. Not unlike what the Baltimore Orioles are doing right now, in my opinion. Right. I don't see that stockpiling. And everybody talks about, well, I have a problem with it. I think that whether it's Jim Crane sticking his nose in there a little bit, or Jeff Bagwell thinking that he knows more, even though he doesn't actually go to. And I like Bagwell. I mean, I think he's great, but
know your role.
I don't feel that front office and that interplay between the front office, the ownership, and everybody involved. If that does not give me the warm fuzzies for the future of the Astros.
It doesn't me either. And I made this comment on our Dome Bombers podcast a couple days ago, our last episode, and I said, from an offensive standpoint, it's clear who the best player is that's coming up in contract is Kyle Tucker. The age, but it is also clear to me by the play on the field who the leader is, and it's not Altuve. Altuve is the heart and soul, right? He is the heart and soul. The leader on that team, it's clear to me now after watching the last 2 weeks, is Alex Bregman. He's the one that comes in there when the catcher and pitcher are on the same page. He's the one in there in the meetings. They have not played the same when he was out for his elbow issue. And I think he's a more important player moving forward, just as a stopgap and leadership side for that organization. And I would sign him, and I would trade Tucker next year to help restock some of that talent. I really would. That's a conversation for another day, but that's kind of what I've seen. And it's clear to me that they're not going to be able to keep them both, and they need to keep one. And I've seen questions in the front office. We are fans on the Dome Plumbers podcast, and we rip the front office and their moves. There seems like there's no plan. There's no long-term goal to what they're doing. So that's my take.
it's like a little kid, and I don't, Dana Brown deserves a level of respect and opportunity to do his job. He's known as a master of the draft, so maybe he turns out to be a master of the draft. It's hard to be a master of the draft and actually be the best team. Houston got to where it is with high draft picks and hitting home runs with low-level Dominican, Venezuelan, Latin American kids. And now they've got this end of Cuba. And so I don't know the answer. I just know that the last 4 years, the dysfunction after Lunau left, and the insertion of Jeff Bagwell as pseudo general manager
makes zero sense. It makes zero sense.
Or the signing of Jose Abreu, Rafael Montero. That wasn't Dana Brown.
Nope.
That was somebody else that has their hand in the cookie jar. And so I don't know if Dana Brown's really going to get a fair shot to show he can do it through the draft and maybe have the Cuban connection continue, right? Because I just don't know. As long as though they have a core of, as long as they keep Alvarez on contract, Altuve on contract, and either one of Bregman or Tucker, they're going to be formidable. Pena getting another Lunau draft pick. I mean, Pena, that was such that's found money. You lose Carlos Correa, who's maybe the best shortstop in the history of the fucking, excuse me, I almost cussed, in the history of the organization.
We can edit it. You're fine.
You replace them with a better shortstop, not necessarily a better stick, but a better shortstop
for $700,000 and not $35 million.
Yeah, I look. Lunau had that thing on rails.
He did,
and now I look at I'm just telling you, I look at the Baltimore Orioles, and I'm just like, that's who the Astros were 10 years ago.
100%. And there's a lot of similarities. There's a lot.
I mean, it's like I think that Crane
you do know who
you get into the like you look at Brian Cashman in New York. He's been around 20 years as a GM.
Well, I think it's longer than that now.
Okay, but has not won anything in the last 15 or 13. Okay, has these seminal players like Aaron Judge, and Garrett Cole. I mean, but they can't find a way to win because they don't do a good job of roster construction and feeding that into it. And the guys at Baltimore are doing that. And
do you know who the Baltimore GM is?
Yeah, he's the former Astros
assistant.
And and also Sig Megnall is the in their front office as well.
That front office is one of the best front offices there's ever been. I don't know everyone's front office, but I know that one, and that one was loaded and talented. And Mike Elias he's doing the same thing that they did 10 years ago with the Astros when you had all these picks and they're just stockpiling.
Yet
I will say,
did Crane think that tree was so tainted that he didn't want to pluck fruit from it to keep that going? He was so pissed at Lunau that he didn't want to, or that Lunau was taking so much credit maybe for what Crane thought he did? I mean, I don't know Jim Crane from Adam
right. I don't know. What I've never understood is the Lunau and AJ Hinch were the scapegoats, right? And yet, by all reports, research, articles, Alex Cora was the one that really was the mastermind behind the sign stealing. He gets suspended for a year, basically by the organization of the Boston Red Sox, and they just hire him back. They said, look, you've paid your penalty. Let's go. He was the mastermind, and he fires Hinch and Luna like on a whim. And I'm like, I don't know. We'll never know, right? There's a lot of things that didn't make sense. I think image was part of it and frustration, but at the same time, he still made a lot of money in 2017 and 18 and 19. And now they validated that in 22. But we could talk Astros all day. You don't want to get me started. I could go and go and go. But I want to wrap this thing up, Bobby, because I really do appreciate your time. I love what you guys are doing for our podcast listeners, the Dome Phoners podcast. Check out on TexasFootball.com. Their Coffee and Football Again is my favorite. It's the one I listen to and watch. They have Recruiting Hour. They have Breakdown. They have Coach Shipley on, which anytime I can hear a whole football coach, that's the best. So, Bobby, again, I appreciate you taking the time. Look forward to seeing. We'll be in touch, and you guys do a great job. Safe travels coming back to Austin for the game. Are you going to Michigan?
Yeah, oh yeah. I'll be at. I think the only game right now that I'm not going to is Arkansas, because I've got some personal things I need to get to on that Sunday, and I can't miss.
That's awesome.
Be everywhere else. I think that Hope the best for the Horns and the Astros this year. I'll just put it that
Absolutely.
way. I grew up in Houston, so the Astros are the team, man.
I know I said on y'all show earlier this morning before we recorded, we got to get a happy hour in New Braunfels area. I've got a good Texas X place we could go to, a bar. So whenever you make your way, if y'all ever do, or bring Jerry, whatever it is. But I appreciate all you guys do. Safe travels, and hook 'em and go Stros.
All right, take care. Good seeing you, Christian.
Thanks, Bobby.